And many thanks everyone for still staying with us here on the program Big Talk. A lot of concern about Nigeria's election, the cost of running election or conducting election by INEC. There are new calls for electoral reforms, even which many of us continue to look at how transparent our elections can be, even as we move ahead of 2027 elections. What are the issues to be addressed, prior to the election? Where do we pay attention to? Do INEC need more funding to get our election better? Do we need more collaboration between security agencies and other agencies to addressing the issues of transparency in the election? What should be the way forward? Looking at the trust deficit already in the country, there's a need for a transparent and better election. And joining us tonight to discuss some of these developments ahead of the election is Executive Director of Electoral College Nigeria, Kunle Lawal. He joins us live virtually tonight on the program from Lagos. Thanks so much, Kunle, for joining us on this show. All right. How do you describe elections in Nigeria? We've gone a long way for our democracy. 25 years of practicing democracy means that we ought to have gotten an election better. People should have confidence on election. But at the count of the 2023 election and the aftermath of it, a lot of Nigerians still feel that a lot of things went wrong. The promises of INEC weren't what they delivered. How do we begin to find meaning towards our election? Because for us who have practiced democracy, that means election is always an option.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for having me here. And statistically, we're looking at elections in Nigeria. Let's state clearly that these elections have generally only been constant from 1999, which makes our democracy like 20 something years in practice. And when you look at it, you ask yourself some questions. And the first question you'd ask yourself is, are our elections safer? Now, most people argue with the advent of social media that election is less safe right now. But if you look at the issues, let me give you an example with Lagos, which I oversaw with the European Union in monitoring and our partners CGID at the time. Lagos is prone to having at least, Lagos has a little over 10,000 polling units, and it always has an issue with at least approximately 1,000 polling units. This was cut down to about 300 polling units into 2023 election. If you're looking at violence, you're going to also say violences that happened in 2019, which had a resident electoral commissioner, I think in Kano, being burnt in his house with his family, and the woman that was burnt alive in Kogi sometime in 2019 too. If you look at those things, they were not prevalent. And now, credibility of INEC. INEC, according to the Electoral Act, clearly states INEC has the power to ratify or to transmit elections as it deems fit, whether electronically or manually or physically, whichever they call it. But INEC made a promise in Nigeria that it was going to electronically transmit. INEC morally abused the Nigerian people, but they didn't break the laws in which, or the act in which it was founded, and that act, those laws are being provided by the Electoral Act. Now, as regards the people, this is the first time in Nigeria. I think we have about 7 parties in the National Assembly, and we have 4 different parties that are state governors, and that is APGA, NNPP, PDP, and APC. So you have to say Nigerian people have a little divorced themselves from the usual party status. So I wouldn't say there aren't negatives. There are negatives in our elections, but I'd rather concentrate on the positives, which has been hard work from both INEC, development partners, and the CSOs that are actually doing the work.
Let me take you towards, earlier we had INEC briefing some civil society organizations. What really came up again was the issue of vote buying. We're trying to look at who is to be held responsible? Do we push the blame to the security agencies? Do we push the blame to INEC? Overlapping some of the function, or the civil society organization? Because at the last count of election in Ondo and that of Edo, it was really mad with a lot of vote buying. And we are also bothered if that trend is sustained, it is posing a lot of threat to our democracy. Some person said, do we rather concentrate on addressing the economic hardship in the country so as for people not to sell their vote? But should that be attainable or obtainable within our democracy?
I think it's very critical to note, very, very critical to note this, that when issues as regards vote buying come into play, I always ask Nigerians, have you read our Electoral Act? And if you have, you know where to point the right fingers. CSOs, INEC are totally powerless on this, and laws that clearly state or mention vote buying critically state also and clearly define that there are punishments for vote buying. But here's the cliche, and I think the National Assembly was very naughty with this. It does not task or mandate any agency in its entire in the on among all the security agencies or even INEC itself onto who's responsible for directly dealing or punishing or holding to account people who break these laws like vote buying and inflated campaign expenses. So it comes down to the fact that the National Assembly actually is guilty, and Nigerians should understand that the National Assembly is totally responsible for this particular problem in which we have. Now, it's critical to note that if no exact agency is tasked by the law that's actually stating that vote buying is criminal, then it means when somebody prosecutes someone for vote buying, when it gets to court, what's going to happen is that you're going to be told that you lack jurisdiction, which is true by the law. So I think National Assembly is being naughty. So I think the Nigerian people, electorates, and CSOs to go back to the National Assembly. National Assembly should go back, amend that law, and critically mention who is responsible for punishing these particular matters. When we do that and the person has jurisdiction, we can now hold the person accountable.
All right. It's really a long walk for us. We've seen the recent elections from the United States. Some said we can't entirely say, the elections was free. Some elections are also having similar challenges, and that's of Nigeria. But for long, we have been having a lot of concern. Some said let's migrate to the digital or the electronic means, and that's the reason why BVAS was also introduced to better elections for the sake of transparency. But even with BVAS, we are still having concerns about the transparency. Some Nigerians feel that there are lots to do, better transparency, because if after I cast a vote, I should be able to be assured that my vote has not just counted, but at the end of the day, it should be the result.
Yes, but when you look at this, you're going to have to ask yourself critical questions. Okay, there was Beavers. Why are results not electronically transmitted? And the few answers that will come to you will be how many servers does INEC even have? And even if INEC has servers, are those servers actually working? To transmit on a land scale of about Nigeria is about 9,208 kilometers. And to effectively do that, you will need multiple highly powerful servers. And INEC doesn't have any of those. So I'm wondering how we're going to electronically transmit. So to break it down into simple English, it's like having a smartphone in present day and having no internet and still expecting you should be able to join WhatsApp groups. I think that's the simplest analogy. I'll look for that. So INEC is presently inefficient to even match the electronic voting or even match anything to electronic transmission.
I would put a searchlight within the local government election that have recently been conducted, because what Benny have described that to be a selection process, that it wasn't really more of a election, and it get bothered to the point that if our own local election are not well conducted, how then do we now expect a better election, from INEC?
Okay, if I get your question right, you're trying to tell me INEC does not conduct local elections. I need to clarify
I'm
that.
not
Or
saying INEC elections. I
let's
mean, in broader look at our elections, we've seen AKISE, I mean, the SEC, the state independent electoral commissions conducting election at the local government, at the level of the state. Now, those that are really having a concern because from what we saw at the activities of that exercise, some said it was more of a selecting process. The election, it wasn't a true reflection of an election. Because if we do not get it right at the grassroots, that means it looks that it's going to be a recalling institute.
So here's the conversation. For an election to meet the parameters, which are it's everybody, nobody's segregated from, and that's inclusion. The first thing we need to do is, do we even participate or care about local government primaries? For me, I think that's where most of the brouhaha, if I can use the word, of course. So we don't care about the primaries. All across Nigeria, in every state in Nigeria, we have less than 7% of the voting population participation in local government elections. If you have that kind of situation, then it is no bother or no surprise or totally no shock that these elections are selections and not elections. Let's be honest, even if we look at our general elections, are they not also selections? Because let's be honest, people don't care about the primaries. They just pick Sani, Eze, and Shegun, and then throw them out, and then we start our ethnic mumbo jumbo. The truth is, we don't participate at political party levels. No party has a membership ratio of more than 1 million people. We don't care about the party elections. How then can we call our entire democracy a full cycle or a vote in a full cycle when we don't pay attention to the most integral part, and then we jump in at the end and want to end up with the right products? You see, you must concentrate on the process before the product can be a good product. Now, with regards to local government elections, less than 7% in any state in Nigeria is the participation level. And once that participation is poor, it gives right to rigging. Elections can only be rigged or can be shortchanged only when people do not participate. So that's the bigger problem. And I think there's too much power in state governors. I don't think state governors should control state electoral commissions, because I think that's where one of the first anomalies ends up. And these are things that I'm even of to believe local government elections should be timed with federal elections and given back to INEC, so that governors do not hold sway. So local government, especially with local government, can really be independent and on its own.
Are you worried about the increased involvement of the judiciary, the aftermath or the post-election? Many political parties are running to courts, filling the courtroom. Be the referee of every election in court in respect to all rules, and that they shouldn't replace, the electoral vote, at the courtroom.
Yes, I don't believe any election that is decided by the court. I don't believe that should be done. I'm a strong advocate for election justice and security. Have an election tribunal. I don't believe election cases should go to the Supreme Court. I believe they should be solved by election tribunals with a timeline before the person is sworn in, so that we do not have multiple different times. Doing his own election at this time, another person. We shouldn't have that. So petitions should be resolved before winners are sworn in. There should be timelines for election tribunals. I also believe there should be an electoral offenses department, a dedicated department to prosecute vote buying, rigging, and violence. Then stronger security measures should be adopted by Nigeria, especially in all elections. And I think there should be abject and strong criticism to INEC, because I don't understand, and this is, I've been part of the party process. I once was the national publicity secretary of a political party, and I understand critically that only the secretary of a party, who is the head of admin, can inform INEC about any primaries. How else do we have multiple ongoing primaries for a particular position by one party that declares six of its candidates won a primaries? So which primaries was INEC at? And which, of course, showed exactly that INEC was there and attested to this candidate winning a particular election. But you have even intra-party struggles where decisions that are made and things that are done are actually done in a way that you cannot even say INEC was part of this. INEC totally uh, had the six primaries, and then the case has to go to court to deduce which primaries was actually legible. For me, this is a big flaw by INEC because all SEC, that state electoral committee, that's all members of that in a political party, and everybody in the National Executive Council, which is the highest federal ruling body in a political party, are known by INEC, and they're the only ones that can give an order to this kind of thing. So I feel these problems are kind of multi-pronged, and I think we might need to look at our Electoral Act and reform if you amend a few parts of it to be able to stop this madness.
Right, a very big concern on how we can better. But what will be your recommendation, even as we now begin to look at party primaries, ahead of the party primaries by next year? Because by next year, 2026, a lot of party primaries will get started. INEC is saying to civil society, get engaged, involved, and know what is happening within the primaries of the political parties, because we sometimes are filled with a lot of responsibility. Secondly, how do we also address the issue of apathy? Because a lot of Nigerians' trust deficit is actually reflected, at the post-2023 election as we move ahead of the 2027.
I first think that Nigerians should stop mortgaging their responsibilities to CSOs, to everybody else apart from themselves. That's the first error in our democracy. Nigerians have mortgaged their responsibilities. Nigerians are supposed to be in political parties. And the Electoral College of Nigeria is one of the CSOs that screams and shouts, everybody should be part of a political party. We don't even want to discuss the voting part. And for me, primaries are critical. And we're spending the next 2 years, working. We spent the first 2 years, that's 2023 into 2025, relaying this message, but we will go a lot stronger in next few years on why political parties matter and party primaries are important. As regards what could be done, I also think political party reforms are very, very critical. We need a stronger internal democracy within political parties to mandate transparent primaries or reduce imposition of candidates by godfathers. It is critical. Campaign finance regulations, I also think, and this is where the trick happens. A lot of campaign finances, a lot of candidates abuse campaign finances even before crossing primaries. The limit for running for governor is 100 million. I can tell you that any governor in Nigeria has already expended 100 million before he gets his ticket. This is through delegates. And so if we do not get the internal democracy of a party right, we're going to continue to have this so-called money for hand, back for ground delegates. And it's going to alter the way our democracy runs. I think those reforms are credited. And I also think we can take a bold step towards independent candidacy, but I don't believe in it working at a federal level. I think it should work for local government and council elections. I think we should allow independent candidacy so people can come out themselves and not be tied by the hassles of one party or wait for your turn, join the line, and etc. I think this would be critical to at least adjusting a few problems that can be solved in 2027.
And addressing the voting appetite,
Okay,
the
and addressing
apathy.
voter apathy. For me, I still come back to the same thing. Nigerians have mortgaged their responsibility. America is not gonna fix Nigeria. Um, Britain or Canada is not gonna fix Nigeria. Nigerians need to understand that they hold the mandate to repair their country. You could have 5K a day and lose 50 million in development in 4 years. The choice is yours. And those choices we make
How about
will
those that will
affect,
get?
those
How
who are
about those
coming
that will
over.
deny the money at the end of the day? They still don't. Get the governance expected.
That would be led to the kind of candidates. You see, one of the problems, so you've opened the window to another problem. One of the biggest problems in Nigeria is political illiteracy, and the Electoral College minimizing it, put it puts it at 83% of Nigerians being politically illiterate. I'll give you an example. So when you vote in a senator, you're expecting roads, electricity, constituency projects. Now, constituency projects are nowhere mentioned in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, making them non-constitutional, meaning they do not have that function, meaning that's an anomaly. But that is what we hinge what we want from senators and House of Rep. What about the bills? What about legislation? What about oversight on the executive? And this is things that we do not hold them. So Nigerians first do not even know what a good candidate is, which is a big problem, and which is why we exist. The Electoral College fully solely concentrated on political literacy, and we feel this is a very, very big problem. We also believe that compulsory voter registration should continue till 2 months before an election, and it should be ongoing always. They've put this, but it's a little skeptical. I'm also very key at political literacy in school curriculums, and that's what we're trying to bring in. We believe that Nigerians are not even politically literate enough to be candidates for a right position. This is not to say that those in power are not, we put their own political illiteracy of those who are elected in power. 63% of the elected officials in Nigeria do not understand jurisdictions of their office. And for me, I think that's a very big problem. That's what generates into voter apathy when you do not understand the responsibilities you have as a citizen or an elected official.
Excellent and well articulated points right there. Kunle Lawal, Executive Director of Electoral College, Nigeria. Thanks so much for sparing some of your time this evening to joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, and it's been a privilege and an honor being here.
All right, we do hope to have you again. A lot of concern in regards to our Nigeria's election, and of course we'll continue to have that discussion and conversation tracking to know how we can better our election. INEC says we need more funding, to address some of the challenges that we have at the last session they had with the Joint Committee of the National Assembly. A lot of talks on how we can get the transparency involved, well, clearly written and felt by Nigerians as we move ahead of the 2027 election. Well, that's the size of the show tonight as we continue to navigate other means of the politics, the economy most especially. What is the impact on the life of Nigerians? We're also seeing the reforms of government. Some government said it looks at 2025 is promising. This is already the month of February. Are there indication that things are already getting better in addressing all of those challenges? We are tracking that and knowing how far this can be impactful in the life of Nigerians. Thanks so much for joining us on the show tonight. My name is Edikan Michael, and it was a pleasure to have you tonight on the show. See you again tomorrow.